I went for a swim in the deep blue sea, and I saw a whale, and he spoke to me.
Welcome to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and today I'll be talking about Leviathan, or The Whale, by Philip Hoare, or Hoare? I don't know how to pronounce that. Does anybody know that? Whenever there's an E at the end of a word, I get really weirded out by all the possibilities. So, I'm sorry, Philip. I probably mispronounced it. This was suggested to me by somebody on this channel, so if you are the one that recommended this book, please let me know, because I really liked it. I give it 5 stars. It was a wonderful ride down pseudo memory lane and an inspiration for future stuff. So what does that mean? What is this about? What do I think? What? Well, first, I should say that the cover is from the art, not from the art. The art that I used for my thumbnail is the same as this, which I didn't realize until I was looking at the cover I don't know what I was doing when I was looking at the cover, but I realized this is actually a section of the art that I used for my thumbnail. Why am I using that really old art? Because there's less likely 300 or 400-year-old person that's going to come sue me for using their art, which I am manipulating in a way, but they're dead and it's old. So awesome book. Now, what is this about? This is about, it's kind of a mix between a number of books I've read. It's about Moby-Dick, it's about whales, it's about whaling, it's about Philip and his life growing up. Philip's about the age of my parents, I think a little bit younger. Man, Philip, that is old. No, it doesn't seem old. Philip is from the UK, and he's talking about his kind of path in life to loving whales. And it starts with him discussing his childhood and his fear of deep water and life in the depths, which is totally reasonable for anybody who's been in the ocean, especially at any kind of real depth, and just feeling so vulnerable and at risk. Because you are, just a little bit. It's not your element, and that's okay. So he also talks about the whale, aka Moby-Dick. Like a lot of people, I think, when he first read Moby-Dick, I don't think he liked it. Now, I might be confusing the movie, because he also brings up the Gregory Peck movie, Moby-Dick, which I've talked about on this channel. I did a comparison between the book and the movie, which I loved. So check out that video. Available. But he appreciated it later. And for people who have really given Moby-Dick a chance, it's an amazing book. And surprisingly accurate, surprisingly relevant, even centuries later. So I was drawn to this book. Thankfully, it was recommended to me, but a lot of the places that Philip visits in this book, I've been to: Mystic, New Bedford. I haven't been to Nantucket yet, but I want to. And he kind of traces some of Herman Melville's life and the influences on the whale, aka Moby-Dick. I don't know why I keep saying the whale, because I keep looking at it. I keep looking at the cover and just seeing the whale. Moby-Dick. Also, his time in the Azores, in the UK, and following different whaling trends in those areas too. Talks about the International Whaling Commission and the kind of the fight to end whaling, the real threats to whales. All different kinds of whales, but because it's Moby-Dick inspired, I guess, there is more focus on sperm whales for a lot of this book. But you will see stuff about humpbacks, fins, right whales, and really the threat to many whales through whaling, which is not a surprise if you've watched any of my other whale videos about books. Also, the continued threat. This was written in, I think, 2008. So there are books that I've read and covered on here that are more recent. Probably the closest to this would have been Ahab's Rolling Sea, and I did a review on that. But this has more of Philip's life mixed into it, where Ahab's Rolling Sea really looks at the science and the history. This is I think a more generalized look at whaling and its impact. I have read books that reference friends or colleagues or acquaintances in the past, a number of financial books, regulatory books, some Coast Guard books. What happened in this book? And I'm still trying to confirm it, and I've called a few times today to talk to a couple organizations. And maybe if I find out by the time I publish this, I'll include something in the description. But probably 30 years ago, my parents adopted a humpback whale for me. I don't know if it was 30 years ago. It may have been longer or further back. Probably was further back. I'm so old. And my humpback whale's name was Colt. And I got Colt's fluke picture and information about Colt. And I really considered Colt my whale. I took pictures of Colt into school. I was like, Colt, my whale. Colt's a humpback. Check it out. Here's a picture. I love this whale. Well, on page, and this is the paperback, on page 369, back in the wheelhouse, the plastic-coated pages are scanned like a cop running a check on a young offender. The arguments continue until someone triumphantly stabs a fluke shot and calls out any one of 1,000 exotic names. Ganesh, with a white patch resembling the elephant-headed Hindu god. Cygnus, a floppy, lopsided dorsal. Or Colt, with her pronounced fin and habit of mugging boats, remaining alongside for so long that captains call for other boats to lure the whale away so they can take their passengers home. Colt. Is this my Colt? I would guess so. But I don't know. That's what I want to confirm with one of these organizations, that Colt is Colt, that there are not multiple Colts out there. But if it is the same whale, how freaking exciting is that? So awesome. So awesome. I also got some ideas on what to see in London and the UK when I go, which I'm excited about. I will have a video, I think, about my time in London as it pertains to Moby-Dick, because I am hoping and planning to see a first edition of Moby-Dick from 1851, which I will not be purchasing, but if it's still there when I visit, it's a $55,000 book. And I've already reached out and they said I could see it and have a private viewing. So how cool is that? I also want to visit where Herman Melville stayed in London when he visited, and we'll see what happens. But that's in the future, and I am planning on videotaping all that, but I don't know what's going to happen. I love this book. I do not have good feelings for the future of whales, and it feels horrible because we've really, really fucked up the ocean. We've already hurt the numbers of whales in ways that they are having serious trouble rebounding from. If you think about really long birth cycles and low numbers of calf per pregnancy, it's hard for a creature that size with the slow birth rate to repopulate. And where a lot of the books I've read cover the 1800s, 1800s, maybe early 1900s, but not so much. The real damage was in the 1900s, mid 1900s. So 60s, well, 50s, maybe 60s, 70s, and 80s. There was a lull during World War II, but after that it really picked up again, especially Japanese and Soviet, although Norway and Iceland have not stopped either. What the fuck, guys? Stop. And some of it is, there's a claim to some cultural background. Japan tries that, but there's nothing culture of taking a 1,000-foot factory ship to another hemisphere and just catching whales by the thousands, chopping them up and putting them on the market, and then pretending like it's scientific. It's not. I call bullshit there. Soviet Union completely lied about their numbers. Big surprise, I know. And then you just have other countries. Norway, Iceland, look at the Faroe Islands, still kill whales for no reason. There are some native tribes, but it's more subsistence-ish, maintaining cultural traditions in Alaska, Washington State, Canada, and along the Arctic. But there, beyond the culling of countless whales over those years, they're still dealing with entanglements with nets that kill them, ship strikes, some whaling, some beachings probably due to noise pollution, especially kind of underwater mapping and sonar equipment that messes with their ability to process sonar. Natural sonar, toxins in the water, and plastics and microplastics. So it's not good, and these are not easy things to fix. And I think the hardest thing is, besides fixing it, no one's really able to take up the cause and fight, because and Philip hits on this, whales don't have a boundary. Water, they travel all over into different jurisdictions and different parts of the world, and it's hard for somebody to assert a jurisdictional claim over protecting a whale that moves out of it or was harmed outside that jurisdiction. So what do? Do you just let them die? Hopefully not. That would be horrible. There's only so much that tweeting about it or talking about it on YouTube in a book review will do. And it's horrible. I would love to see whales up close. Again, I was in the Coast Guard, a marine mammal program coordinator for my ship. We saw whales. Generally, we were trying not to hit them. And we did have different things we had to do when we saw whales. But, years later, I really would have liked to have gotten closer and experienced them more on the level that Philip does in this book, specifically sperm whales. But anything, I guess, would be better than nothing. And Philip really ends the book talking about this experience he had getting in the water with sperm whales, and just the connection and I think the vulnerability that you feel being next to an animal that large, and an animal that's in its element, and an animal that is a predator but is incredibly intelligent, and kind of making that connection. And I just wish I could do that. This has again motivated me to visit New England and see more of the whale based sites, probably revisit New Bedford Whaling Museum, revisit Mystic Seaport, eventually go to Nantucket, visit Arrowhead, where Herman Melville lived. Really experience those areas more, because when I went, and I've done a video of my time in New England when I went back to Connecticut for my class reunion, that's before I read Moby-Dick, and I had read some books about whales, but I look back and that was a long time. It felt like it was just yesterday, but it was a while ago, and I've read so much more and learned so much more and experienced so much more in this area that I really want to go back and do it again and get a better feel. It was a great experience. I loved it. But I want to go back and see more and appreciate more, and go on a whale watch or something, and show my wife and my daughter New England in the fall and what it's like for this area that used to be dominated by whaling and has so much history, U.S. history, and change. But I have to say again, great book. I really liked it. It was a perfect time to read this. It has motivated me to read some other books. There wasn't a lot of new stuff in here. It is it's not an old book, but it's an older book compared to other ones that I've read. but it was refreshing, the amount that was in here and things that I may have already known, but kind of just had a refresher to remind me of things I've already learned. So if you like whales, if you like whaling, don't like whaling, if you are interested in whaling, you like whales, you like Moby-Dick, you like Herman Melville, you want to learn more about this history, check out Leviathan or The Whale by Philip Hoare, I don't know how to pronounce it. Somebody tell me. And whoever recommended this book, please tell me that too. So thanks for being here, and go whales. Have a good one. Bye. And Colt, if you're out there, I'm going to try to find out if you're the Colt, my Colt. And if you are, I'm going to see if I can adopt you for my daughter. A generational adoption between father and daughter. 3 generations, I guess. Anyway, thanks, and have a good one. Bye.
I took a deep breath and I went down under. Show me the stars in the sky from under.